अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुर्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासाहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगना ललिता श्रीविशाखावितंश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances on behalf of everybody who have joined the group and are about to join. Prabhuji, thank you very much for making yourself available twice in this week in spite of your busy schedule. I'm really grateful to and I have ambushed you for today, but we really love to hear from you. So thank you for making yourself available. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 2, Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is the scheduled incarnations, and the text for today is text 47. So over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai, thank you very much. So I'll just read the Sanskrit and then translation and purport. Sashvat prasantam abhayam pratibodhamatram sudam samam sadasata paramatma tattvam shabdo na yatra purukarakavan kriyarto maya parachabi mukhe cha vilajamana Tadvai padam bhagavata paramasya pumso rameti ad vidura jashra shukam vishokam. Translation. What is realized that the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss, without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruit of activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Enjoyer, the Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman, or the Summum Bonum, because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step, due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the Absolute distinct from the material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light, and thus the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the Personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman, as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. The Personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization, as explained in the first canto. One must understand all the three features of the Absolute Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Pratibodha Matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus in the first realization of Brahman, there's the negation of such material inebrieties, and there's a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. When the personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities because he is the supersoul, or Paramatma, within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness, without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken. Thus, there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruit of activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the Personality of Godhead as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things. But this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also, the same is affirmed in the statements about the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification. And also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein, sad asata param. The illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief, but here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction, whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they were originally meant, namely, the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore sense gratification, there is And therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Sokyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. Om Jnanatamidandasya Gadangana Shalakaya Chaksharan Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Interesting stuff. Wow. So there's a huge difference now between our senses and the senses of the Lord, or those who are pure devotees of the Lord, dedicated 100% to the service of the Lord. It doesn't mean that we negate our senses. Of course, there's a very big description here in Prabhupada's purport of the difference between the Brahman, the Jyotish, or the light, and the actual Paramatma, and then, of course, the personality of Godhead himself. So we go through the 3 phases when we begin our spiritual journey. Prabhupada is saying here, as explained in the 1st canto, one must understand all 3 features of the Absolute. So it's not that we negate or reject or deny or ignore Brahman realization. Of course not. And of course, the next stage, bring Paramatma, the super soul in the heart, and ultimately Bhagavan. But as Prabhupada has explained so many times, when we're on a platform of engaging in the service of the Lord, as Bhagavan, of course, that's in a mood of awe and reverence and great majesty, Aishvarya Leela, even that, we even go beyond that as devotees, and we engage in the service of the Lord in a loving, reciprocal way. And there is no difference between that and engaging in the service of the Lord as Bhagavan, but it's deeper. So each stage is deeper. Each stage is a realization in itself. And Prabhupada explains in so many places, just like when the train is approaching the station at night, you can see the light of the train approaching the station. It's a very simple explanation. Prabhupada gives these amazingly simple explanations for what appears to be the most complex and convoluted philosophy. Prabhupada puts everything into perspective. We can see from this purport, there's a lot in this purport, and it's very intricate, it's very deep, and there's a lot to take in. But Prabhupada, as usual, as always, because he's dealing with us Westerners and who are not in any way spiritually inclined, he wrote these books for us, basically because he said, if America and the Western society takes the Krishna consciousness, the whole world will follow. Yad yad acharati shrestha. Whatever the great man does, the common man will follow. That is natural. So Prabhupada wrote these books basically for us Westerners, and he put it, the most deepest philosophy, into the simplest language, although it doesn't appear from this purport that the language is very simple. Certainly, there are some purports like that where you just can't avoid it. You just have to deal with the reality of what's being trying to be explained to us in the simplest way possible, but it's still like practically beyond our comprehension what we're dealing with. But we're dealing with something that is a very, very high level of attainment when we reach that. So we have to go on a step-by-step process, the process of sadhana bhakti. But as Prabhupada explained, when the train is approaching the station in the dark, now first of all, you see the light in the distance. And then as it gets closer, you can see the locomotive, you can see the engine. And then as it pulls into the station, you can see, oh, it has carriages, it has people, there's so many activities going on, and so on and so forth. If it's, if it's Avanti, it's usually late, but we don't talk about that. We'll just deal with whatever the train is dealing with. So there's so many activities going on within the train itself, so many activities going on within the carriage. People are boarding and alighting and so on and so forth. So the same when we're looking at the sun is giving us light. The sun is coming in through our window. The sun is not actually in our room, but the light of the sun is in the room. And then we can see that the light of the sun, the rays of the sun coming into our room, in our house, in our garden, they are actually representing the sun, and they're directly connected with the sun. So everything is connected. And Prabhupada said, if you go closer to the sun, and you can see that there's a sun god, there are people inhabiting the sun, just like there are people inhabiting every planet, and you need to have a particular body to be able to live on those particular planets. It's not that there's no life on the sun. Otherwise, how could there be a sun god? How could there be a Vivasvan or a Surya? It's impossible. So these things are beyond the concept of the more mundane personalities that we have inhabiting our planet. But nonetheless, because they're beyond our concept, because they're beyond the concept of the vast majority of the people, Samahatma Sadurlabha, the people who are engaged in trying to figure out what is it all about, how does it work, Samahatma Sadurlabha, they're rare. Out of many thousands among men who approach me, hardly one knows me in truth. So this is the nature of the absolute truth. It is deep stuff. We're going from a situation of complete and total ignorance, where we have been in ignorance, ignoring the concept of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, ignoring our relationship with Him, ignoring the fact that the Supersoul is guiding us at every single moment in time for millions of years. So now we're turning it around, finally. As Prabhupada says here, the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, in other words, the essence or the ultimate source of everything. That's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, meeting the Personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. So material inebriety means somebody basically who's drunk. And when you're drunk, you can't appreciate anything. You need to be sober. You need to be dhira. And sober, more than just sober, dhira means that you're fixed. And you're not deviating from the path. You're not going in a different direction. You're actually fixed. So that takes a lot of discipline. That's why we have disciples. The word disciple comes from the word discipline. If we're not disciplined, then how can we appreciate anything? So as Prabhupada says here, it's just the pratibodha matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries. And thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there's the negation of such material inebrieties. So again, it goes back to being sober, being drunk, whatever the case may be. And there's a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease and old age. So we get this with Brahman realization, that we know that there's something beyond that we know that there's something beyond the body. We understand and appreciate that there is a soul, that there is spirit, that there is spiritual energy, and it is separate from the body. But that is the very first basic step in Brahman realization. But even that step is a huge, massive step for most of us to take. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The first conception of impersonal Brahman is that we're free from the bodily conception of life, and more to the point, we're free from the pangs of material miseries. So that's fine. Everybody wants to be in a situation of no anxiety. Everybody wants to be in Vaikuntha, although we don't necessarily describe it as that. But we all want to be free from anxiety. There's one anxiety or another. But then, when we go beyond the anxiety stage, then we also need to be active. It is the nature of the soul to be active. We cannot live without activity. We cannot live without engaging our senses either. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita very clearly, what can suppression accomplish? Absolutely nothing. So it's pointless just negating constantly all the time. We need to have a positive aspect that we can approach and deal with the positive relationship that we have with the Supreme Lord, and ultimately deal with the positive relationship we have with ourselves. Instead of negating everything, of course, we have the regulative principles, we have so many rules and regulations that we follow as devotees that are fairly basic, that just come as second nature. But there's something even beyond that. It's not just a question of observing all the rules and regulations and then that's it, and then we reach the absolute truth. No. We have to develop a loving, reciprocal relationship with the Supreme Lord. But before we can do that, we have to develop a loving, reciprocal relationship with ourselves and understand who we are and understand the science of self-realization, the journey of self-discovery. And when we understand that, then we can begin to develop a relationship with the Supreme Lord. But before we do that, as we develop a relationship with ourselves and understand who we are, then we can develop a relation with other people, the people around us, and relate to each other in a loving, reciprocal, spiritual way, and not just based on the bodily. What can I get out of you? What can you give to me? What can I give to you? And it's a quid pro quo. Well, that's not the goal. That we just have nice relationships and everybody is lovey-dovey. But we have to go beyond that and go beyond the material relationships and understand that all these relationships are ultimately connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Prabhupada says in the purport, I'm trying to break it down bit by bit for my own understanding also. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. So we can't avoid affection. We don't want to be just, and then everybody is peaceful, Om Shanti and all that kind of stuff. That's wonderful. That's great if we have that and we're in that mood, but there's something there that we have to engage. We have to engage. We have to be doing something. We're active. We're not just, Om Shanti business. I mean, that's all well and done, well and good, but at the same time, we need, if you, just like when you go on holiday, you go to a beach somewhere. I was recently in Mombasa, and it was wonderful to be there. It was great to be back in Bamburi and going to the beach and having a swim and everything like that, and getting a madafu and so on and so forth. But there's only so much you can do when you're swimming and enjoying the beach. And then after some time, you say, oh yeah, okay, what's next? You need to be engaged. Whereas in Krishna consciousness, the engagement is unlimited. It never stops. It just goes on forever. Not only does it never stop, but the bliss and the engagement increases and increases and increases more and more, the more we're engaged. Teisham Satata Yuktanam, the more we're engaged, the more Krishna reciprocates with that engagement, and then the more he gives us the understanding by which we can come to him, and then that increases the bliss for which we are always hankering, as we say in the Shikshastakam every morning. The Supreme Lord is the soul of everything. Therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. It's realized, it's understood. It's actually understood. It's not just a theoretical understanding, but it is actually understood in every aspect of our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with Krishna. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of the soul to soul, not body to body. Our conception right now, our understanding right now, is not negating the body, it's not negating relationships that we have right now, but it's understanding that these relationships are temporary. And they'll only give a certain degree, a certain amount of satisfaction up to the limits of their temporary nature. But then we need something that goes beyond that, and we're always seeking more and more and more, because that's our nature. It's our nature to seek more and more and more, because that's who we are. We're Sat Chit Anand. And if we're trying to satisfy ourselves with the Sat Chit Anand aspect of our need, of our desire, with something that's going to give just temporary satisfaction, we'll always be dissatisfied. So we'll always be inclined to go and seek something else. The problem is, when we're going to seek something else, we go to seek it in some material relationship, some material aspect that is going to give us some satisfaction. There's no doubt about it. There is some satisfaction in the material attributes. It's obvious. Otherwise, why would we bother? But it's limited, and that's the problem. I mean, we're seeking the eternal relationship, the eternal bliss, the eternal satisfaction in something that is limited. We can never be satisfied. So that's a great theory, but then how do we put it into practice? The Prabhupada says, but that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. It's blind, it's drunk. When the personality of Godhead is met, however, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. And the perfect example of that, we can all remember, we know the story, we've told it dozens of times, is Dhruva Maharaj. So he was looking for something material. He wanted the kingdom of his father, and he was rejected by his stepmother. So and indirectly rejected by his father. So then when he went into the forest, he did the whole meditation, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narada Muni tried to put him off, tried to direct him in a different way. You're only 5 years old, you never succeed, blah, 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 blah. So he said, no, I want this, and I'm determined to get it. As a 5-year-old kid going out into the forest. So he was seriously determined, just like Prahlad Maharaj, preaching to his friend, again, a 5-year-old. So a five-year-old can do it. Prahlad is a spirit soul, just like us. He's not God. Dhruva Maharaj is a spirit soul, just like us. He's not God. So we're on the same level. The problem is we are separated so many millions of times in distance away from the reality of who we are. So, and then after his meditation, Dhruva Maharaj in the forest, then Lord Vishnu appeared to him simply by his chanting of that mantra. Lord Vishnu appeared to him, and then he was like absolutely devastated when Lord Vishnu left. Then he realized, what was I searching for? What was I looking for? I was a waste of time searching after pieces of broken glass, desperately fighting, killing each other for pieces of broken glass when there's this diamond there and I'm rejecting, that I don't even see it. I can't even know that it's there. So we're doing exactly that, searching after pieces of broken glass when there's a diamond there, and like the Kohinoor, the biggest diamond in the world, and we're scrambling for bits of broken glass because they're shiny. As the saying in English goes, all that glitters is not gold, and that's a fact. Nothing is there in the material world that's going to attract us eternally. So we have to finally reach the stage in our lives where we say, okay, enough is enough. Let me go for the real deal. So how do we go about doing that? Prabhupada is saying, he is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, and Prabhupada uses this really strong term, he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the super soul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. So in other words, we have to be, in some sense, engaging with the Brahmajyoti. In some sense, we have to be engaging with the Brahman, because then we're in a liberated stage. So we have to be on that level of purity, that level of spirituality. But then we have to take it a step further and engage with the super soul, who's there in our hearts constantly, going from one body to the next, to the next, to the next, millions and millions of times, directing us throughout so many species of life. But we turn our back. We completely ignore the super soul, and we go in our own direction, say, no, forget it, just leave me alone, don't bother me. As such, Prabhupada says, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness. As such, if we engage in the full affection for the Lord, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. That's another thing that holds us back. We think, well, we've been let down by so many situations, by so much in terms of our relationship with family, society, friends, business acquaintances, whatever the case may be, colleagues, work partners. So many people have let us down, and we've been feel, well, why bother? Why bother? Just give up. And that's it's designed for that. The whole material world is designed for that. It's designed to discourage us from the very word go, from the time of birth. It's such an incredibly painful experience. We forget everything from the previous life. So it's designed for that. But Prabhupada says, as such, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fears being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. So it's completely different. And we have to accept that. And we should accept that. And how do we accept that? We accept by taking shelter of the spiritual master, taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada, taking shelter of his instructions, his bhajans, his purports, his chanting, his books, his tapes, his philosophy. Everything is there, unlimitedly. He has given us all aspects of the philosophy. There's a wonderful quote here in the Gita. Krishna says, under illusion, you are now declining to act to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti. Under illusion, you're declining to accept my instructions, my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature. So this is the thing. We are born of our own nature. We cannot avoid that. So why not just act in the service of the Lord? We're going to act anyway. So why not act for our own self-interest? Why do we temporarily go in a direction that's just going to take us away from our own self-interest? Forget for a moment the interests of the Lord. Forget for a moment the service of the Lord, but act for our own self-interest. Ultimately, this is for our own benefit. Nobody's going to is Krishna going to be benefited if we gain in the material sense? If Krishna going to be benefit if we don't? Is Krishna going to be benefit if we? He is completely and totally independent. He's not dependent on whether we're going to advance in Krishna consciousness or whether we're going to regress in spiritual life. Krishna is completely and totally complete. Om Purnam. He's complete in every single aspect. So in the 18th chapter, Krishna goes on to say in the next verse, the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So the body is just a machine. It's compiled of so many different parts. It's a very complex machine, and because it's made by the Supreme Lord himself. It's designed by Krishna. Prabhuji just carried out the instructions of the Lord and how to manifest everything in the universe. But the whole nature of how it's created, how it's designed, how it's put into play, it's just so complex. Even a single cell is so complex. But what to speak of the whole body itself? Every single part of the body working in conjunction with the other parts in the holistic way. O skin of Bharat, Krishna says, and he's talking about the super soul here. Krishna's talking in the third person, very unusual way of explaining things. But Krishna is saying to Arjuna, O skin of Bharat, surrender unto him utterly, not to the somebody else. Of course, there's nobody else. Surrender unto him means surrender unto the super soul and be guided by the super soul. By his grace, you will attain transcendental peace and a supreme and eternal abode. So Prabhupada says, a living entity should surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart, and that will relieve him from all kinds of miseries of this material existence. So take shelter of the super soul. Why deny? Why? Here's the super soul guiding us there, giving us every single opportunity to surrender. We say, no, I'd rather do it my way. Just like when you go to When you go to a university, you go to a course, you want to be a mechanic, you want to be a carpenter, you want to be a builder or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, you go to the university, you go to learn from somebody who already knows. And then here's somebody trying to teach you, a lecturer is trying to give you some instruction on how to follow your chosen career in life. And you say, no, I know better. But this is the super soul guiding us from every aspect of our life. And we're saying, no, I know better. Please leave me alone. Don't bother me. I don't need a conscience. You're constantly reminding me about my conscience. I don't need that. Just let me do my own thing. Let me go my own drunken way and stumble through life and falter and stagger and fall and then make so many mistakes and suffer as a consequence, suffer immensely as a consequence, and then gain nothing from it. And the whole of my life, the human form of life, is then wasted and then there's nothing left. So what's the point? Better we at least endeavor to engage in the service of the Lord. And what does Krishna say in the final analysis? He says to Arjuna, text 63, I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Thus I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Now, Krishna says, deliberate on this fully, then do what you wish to do. Do what you wish to do. It's up to you. There can be no force. How can there be force? It's impossible. I mean, it's a complete opposite of love. Force and love, they just do not go together. So there has to be a loving reciprocation, and then in that way, we're the gain. We gain everything, and we lose nothing. We lose absolutely nothing. I mean, we're still engaged. We're still engaged. We're still engaging the senses. We're just dovetailing those senses, that same desire that we have in the material sense. We're just turning that around 180 degrees and saying, wow, look what's here. Look what I can do. Look what's possible. There's nothing impossible. As Prabhupada said so many times, the word impossible does not exist in the dictionary of a Vaishnava. It's simply not, it's inconceivable. We can do anything. Look what the early devotees did when they were sent to Canada and London by Srila Prabhupada. Married couples with children. They just joined the day before, practically speaking. They knew absolutely nothing. But Prabhupada showed them, you chant in this way, you do bhajans in this way, you give lecture in this way, you say this, you say that. Prabhupada trained them in every single detail. And look what happened. From nothing. He was dealing with, excuse me, practically with blocks of wood. And Prabhupada turned these blocks of wood into something dynamic and sent these couples out all over the world. And look what they achieved. Coming from nowhere, no background in Krishna consciousness whatsoever, no connection with the Vaishnava philosophy in any way, shape, or form. Coming from all kinds of hippie backgrounds and everything like that. And look what happened. See the power of Shakti, the spiritual potency, that spark. Just touched by that spark. And Prabhupada goes on to say here, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, never. Thus, there is no grief and there is no fear. So up to what point do we surrender to that? We don't want grief. We don't want fear. So Prabhupada is saying here, the relationship with the Lord is never broken. There is no grief. There is no fear. No. I mean, there has to be fear. There has to be grief. No, I can't believe that. It's not possible. But so many people have experienced it. There is no grief. There is no fear. So why are we still holding back? Prabhupada says, this next line is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Such happiness is inexplicable by words. And that's a fact. We all have that experience to a small degree. Maybe for a microsecond, we just get a glimpse into the reality of who we are and our connection with the Lord. Somebody says something that just clicks with us, or we're in a kirtan, or we're taking prasadam with the devotees, or something just clicks and you say, wow, this is amazing. And it's true. There are no words for those kind of moments that just impact on our lives in a microsecond. And then just like Dhruva Maharaj, he gets the darshan of the Lord for a microsecond, and then everything else is just pales into insignificance. Such happiness is inexplicable by words. There can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruit of activities, by arrangements, and by sacrifices. And this is a fact. And any attempt to do it in an artificial way, it simply doesn't work. It simply just negates everything else. It simply does not work. There can be no attempt to generate such happiness, this spiritual connection that we momentarily get, all of us in our lives. There's no way that we can generate such happiness by fruit of activities. It has to be pure. It has to be spiritual. It has to be connected with the absolute truth. Unbroken happiness exchanged with the Supreme Person. We must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. So it even transcends the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things. But this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. So we all have senses, and we all engage those senses in so many material attributes, and we think that this will give us satisfaction. It doesn't. It just completely and totally takes us away from the ultimate goal. But the same senses engaged in the service of the Lord produce. You're going to cook, you cook for Krishna. You're going to sing, you sing for Krishna. You're going to dance, you dance for Krishna. You're going to put on a play, you want to go to the theater, you want to go to a movie, you go to a movie about Krishna, you want to go to the theater, put on a play for Krishna. This Prabhupada loved when the devotees would put on a drama. He loved it. And there's so many examples of Prabhupada actually participating in the drama himself and relishing it. I've told you the story previously of my very good friend, Lokamangala Prabhu, who was a brilliant actor, and he performed so many plays in front of Prabhupada. Absolutely brilliant. He was a professional actor before he became a devotee, black-bodied American devotee. He was first class. The whole world knew him. All the devotees knew Lokamangala. And he played the part of Hiranyakashipu in the Leela of Lord Nrsingadev. He was Hiranyakashipu. He wasn't playing Lord Nrsingadev. And Prabhupada was hiding behind the sannyasis in the front row of the theater because he was afraid of Hiranyakashipu in the form of Lokamangala. Prabhupada was hiding. Said, who is this? Is he really one of our men? Prabhupada said. He was astonished. And at the end, Prabhupada gave him his garland, patted him on the head, and gave him a sweet from his plate. He said, that was absolutely brilliant, because Prabhupada participated in the Leela. He was in the Leela. He was a part. He wasn't just like a simple observer watching something go. Prabhupada was a part of the Leela. Prabhupada was conscious of Krishna at every single moment in time. Prabhupada was waiting for Hiranyakashipu was waiting for Lord Nrsingadev to kill Hiranyakashipu. And he was in fear, just like the demigods. They were in fear. At the moment when we described it a few weeks ago, the Leela of Lord Nrsingadev, we remember the demigods when Lord Nrsingadev, when he let Hiranyakashipu go, the demigods were, the Lord was just playing with him. But the demigods were in fear. They thought, maybe he might win. Because they were thrown out of their abodes. They'd been kicked out. Indra was kicked out of his kingdom. Hiranyakashipu had taken over the whole universe. There was nowhere left to go. This was their last hope. And here, Lord Nrsingadev, he let him go. And they were like, wow, what's going on here? So Prabhupada was like that. When Lokamangala was playing the part of Hiranyakashipu, he thought, Hiranyakashipu, he's gained the upper hand. He may win. Prabhupada was like completely absorbed. There was so many occasions where Prabhupada was on morning walks or in room conversations where the devotees would ask Prabhupada a question, And Prabhupada would take a few moments of hesitancy before he would give the answer. And on so many occasions, the devotee said, Prabhupada, you hesitated to give the answer there. What was going on? I had to consult with Krishna. So Prabhupada was connected at every single moment in time. There wasn't a single moment when he wasn't connected. So we're in the same situation. We're always connected with the super soul. We're always connected with Krishna, but we just turn our backs. So we have to regain that spiritual energy, remember, again, become a member of the spiritual fold, of the spiritual connection that we all have, and relate with each other in a spiritual way, and not try to exploit each other. Happiness, but we must all know happiness, unbroken happiness, exchange with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends impersonal conception of the Upanishads. Herein also, the same is affirmed in the statements about material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification. And also, the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. And that's a fact. We're not devoid of senses, those who are liberated. Nor will we become devoid of senses. As Krishna explains in the Gita again, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. We're never impersonal. We're never voidistic. That's not our nature. Our nature is to engage. So the saying, as Prabhupada is saying here, the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. Spontaneous. That's the thing. That's the word. It's spontaneous and it's unbroken joy. We get these glimpses of spontaneous happiness occasionally, either from a material point of view or even more rarely from a spiritual point of view. But this is spontaneous and unbroken. Not only unbroken, ever increasing. This is our nature, Satchitanand. This is where we have to go. This is the direction in which we're all headed. If we just let go of the material aspect and just join that. Just get into it and throw ourselves into it with full fervor. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. So Prabhupada is saying here very clearly, all of the senses, both of the Lord and the devotees, are without material contamination. When we break down Prabhupada's purports line by line by line, they begin to make a lot more sense. We just need to examine them and scrutinizingly study, as Prabhupada said in the introduction to the Gita. Scrutinizingly study. That's why he's giving us the breakdown of each verse, word by word by word. Because every single word is important. Every syllable is important. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein. Beyond, which are beyond material. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein. Sat asata param. The illusory material energy cannot work there. Cannot. So when we reach that stage, when we eventually reach the stage on the Brahma Bhuta platform, we're completely free from all material contamination, and then we begin to go into the personal aspect, the material energy can't work there. It's simply, there's no way for it to penetrate. There's no chink even in the armor. It's impossible because the senses are fully engaged in the service of the Lord. So we've turned the whole ship around completely. Being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief, that we know. We have that experience. We don't need to explain that. But here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. Clearly. There is a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. So we kind of compare the two. We kind of say, oh yeah, but I have this experience in life, or I have that experience in life, and my experience, it doesn't relate to what's written here. But how can you make that analogy? You have to compare like with like. We cannot match our material conception and our experience in material life with what the spiritual world is holding for us, what the spiritual engagement is guaranteeing that we will succeed. Uninterrupted joy, unbounded joy. Because we don't have experience of that, and we say, no, it's neti, I just reject. That doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. We cannot make that comparison. We cannot act on the platform of the mind. We have to transcend that mind and go beyond it and realize that until and unless we surrender to the process, until and unless we surrender to the guru who already knows how to go beyond the mind, how to go beyond the material senses, we're banging our head against the wall. So what's the point? Banging your head against the wall. It's called a head banger. So it's a complete waste of time. The senses in the material world are surcharged like a turbo prop, surcharged with material ignorance, surcharged with material ignorance. Just listen to this kind of a phrase. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance, and we're totally immersed in that material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction, whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they were originally meant. And what is that? Namely, the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural. This is the thing. What we're doing is unnatural. We think it's natural. It's not. It's complete opposite. So the spiritual senses are natural, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination because the senses are spiritually purified. So what we're doing right now is completely and totally against our own self-desire and our own self-need. And it's completely and totally unnatural, and it feels natural to us because we've been doing it for billions of lifetimes. So this, to turn that around, is a job. Nobody's denying that it's a job. It's an endeavor. But when we start that endeavor, look what we gain from it. Such satisfaction, Prabhupada says, of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. So those who are like-minded, reciprocators, we engage with them. Shared. So it's a sharing experience. We're not individual, that we're completely alone. We're sharing this. We're sharing this love of God. We relish it. We engage with it in the millions and millions and millions. Such activities are unlimited and constantly increasing. Unlimited and constantly increasing. This is what we want. This is what we need. This is what we beg for. This is what we actually crave. And if we engage with it, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Everything we're doing is completely artificial. Whereas spirituality is second nature. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Sokyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. So we have a bit to go yet before we jump onto the 5th canto, but every single verse, every single page that we turn in this Bhagavatam is giving us so much nectar, so much joy, so much knowledge, so much to think about, so much to relish. And it's just all of this, imagine, all of this, the whole Bhagavatam set, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ishopanishad, the Bhagavad Gita, all of this is to satisfy our intellect, satisfy our mind, so we can reach the stage of actually just complete and total surrender to the Maha Mantra. That's all. That's all it takes. Just dive into the Maha Mantra, the ocean of devotion. And then everything is there within it. But because the mind needs some engagement, but what about this and what about that? And the mind will always bring doubts about this, that, or the other. We have these books that will deal with all our questions, all our troubles, all our doubts, all our manifestations of our material needs that we have to fulfill. The Bhagavatam will answer everything, everything. We just have to surrender to the process and do it and study it, and everything is there. Oh, I've gone a little bit over the time, sorry. So thank you very much. Thank you for your patience and as usual for tolerating my ramblings and just sometimes I just go off on a tangent, don't even know what I'm saying myself, but please forgive me. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions or comments before we close up? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So it's a long purport today and so much in this purport, and personally I have to read it or read the purport over again and again. But a lot of points coming out in this purport. But I just wanted to ask you about the senses. So the senses that we have, we'll have the same senses when in the spiritual world and when we go to the spiritual, but whoever is existing in the spiritual world besides the Lord, they will have the same senses or they'll have more. I thought they would probably have more senses, or is it just these five?
Yeah, we'd have the same. I mean, they're enhanced, they're different, of course. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he once explained, well, not once, many times, he explained, just like we live in a three-dimensional world, whereas the spiritual world is multi-dimensional. So we can't really compare. Yes, in a sense, we would have the same senses. Do you know where this is explained at great length? And I'd strong. I mean, it's a bit of an advanced study, but it's worthwhile picking it up and trying to relish it. The Nectar of Devotion. That's a great book for explaining the senses, and explains each and every individual desire of the gopis and how they fulfill this desire, like even envy, jealousy, hate. All these things are done in the service of Krishna. I mean, the same experiences that we have in the material world, they're engaging them in the service of Krishna. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu can't be beaten for going into this really deep stuff where it explains how do we engage the senses, how do we engage all kinds of seemingly material desires, but are there in the spiritual world. Everything that we are doing here in the material world is a perverted reflection of what is going on in the spiritual world. It's just that the difference is, in the spiritual world, it's spiritualized. It's engaged in the service of the Lord. And as Krishna says in the Gita, and I quoted earlier, Krishna says, what can suppression accomplish? You can't accomplish anything with suppression. We have to accomplish something with knowledge. And we have to go forward with knowledge, with understanding, with cognizance, total awareness of who we are dealing with. Yes, the senses are there in the spiritual world, but they're completely different to our senses now. Just like you have the desire to eat, but first that same desire, that same need, not a desire, you offer it to the Lord. So you're still engaged in the kitchen, you're still cooking, but you offer it to Krishna. So then that enhances that. Not only does it enhance that process of eating, but then it's spiritualized, completely spiritualized, and the food becomes prasadam. It's the mercy of the Lord, because the Lord has accepted it. Patram pushpam palam tayam. So yes, everything is enhanced, everything is engaged, nothing is left out. And the battle of Kurukshetra, warfare is engaged in the service of the Lord. Krishna is spending the whole of the second chapter trying to encourage Arjuna, get up and fight. Why is talking like a fool? Get out there and kill. I mean, what kind of a God is that? So everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. You think the Lord had a difficult time killing Hiranyakashipu? He loved it. He was so in bliss coming to save his devotee. Everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. Nothing is left out. Everything is perfect and complete. Yes, the senses are totally and completely transcendental. The same senses, because they're engaged. That's why Prabhupada says in this purport, the Lord and his devotee are non-different. Non-different in the sense that the devotee of the Lord, he's completely and totally engaged in the service of the Lord. He's not separated from that engagement, ever. Prabhupada says there was never a single moment in my life that I can remember where I was not thinking of Krishna. So what is that? That's completely on a different level to what we're experiencing. But that is our destiny, that is our goal, that is our everything. And it's there for us, for all of us. So we're in a wonderful, wonderful situation. We just have to take advantage. Just eat the cake. It's there in front of you. You can have your cake and eat it in Krishna consciousness. Don't stop. Joy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. You put it so nicely. Yet it is so difficult. It seems easy, but it's difficult.
Yes, yes, yeah. We are our own worst enemy.
Enemies.
Just us. Just don't forget about everybody else. Somebody who's against us or for us or whatever. That's irrelevant. We are our own worst enemy. We hold ourselves back. And there's absolutely. Just read this purport. Just read the encouraging words of Prabhupada in this purport. Every purport. It's all there. Every sentence. Every sentence is a gift. Every sentence is the most ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. Every single word of Prabhupada. Prabhupada has given us so much. We can't even begin to understand what he has given us. To get us out of this place of anxiety and go to Vaikuntha once and for all. Jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments from the group? I know we have exhausted our time. Okay, there are no questions. Can I request Dennis Prabhu, Bhaktamuga Prabhu, can you please end the session for today? Hare Krishna. Okay, maybe he's not able to unmute. I can end the session. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this elaborate talk. We'll look forward to another session again this week. Let us all unmute and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in glorification of His Grace Vidura Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare.
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare Hare.
Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa
Yupascha
sindhubhayeva
Kripasinuvaivacha
cha patitanam
Patitanam
pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
namo.
Namo Namaha. Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
His
Vaishnava
Grace
Thakur
Vidura Prabhu
ki.
ki jai.
Hari
Rathraj
Hari.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
Hare
Thank
Thank you,
Krishna.
you.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Good night. Thank you. Hari
Hare
Bol.
Hare Bol.
Hari